The question of who is the focusing energy of the messages is a difficult question to answer tactfully and yet completely. Isness is the focus to be sought by each individual awareness. As each expands within the process of self-identification, so does the ability to allow the flow of isness to move through their experience. Each will attract into their awareness knowledge to live into wisdom. The vibratory rate of the planetary environment and of the members of humanity on Earth is low enough that this ability is currently virtually inaccessible. To assist willing members of mankind to access the necessary information to provide a way to transcend this current aberrant state, various volunteer awareness points within higher vibrational frequencies have acted as booster stations to focus this information through those willing to participate on the Earth plane. Knowing the custom of Earth's inhabitants requiring the personify to identify mode, names from the exotic to the ridiculous have been given as sources of this information. The information included exercises in discernment. Most participants failed the discernment tests. Much was filled with profound truth, but much of it was drained of energy by the continual parade of victims wanting their personal problems solved for them. The information became distorted as the foci were withdrawn and the volunteers winged it, faked it, on their own, for their sincerity was lost in the notoriety and greed that resulted. In view of this history, it was the mutual agreement between the parties involved in the dictation, translation, transcription process for these messages that the identities of the foci involved would remain unidentified and there would be no monetary rewards whatsoever involved. Further, there would be no personal information disseminated for any one individual's benefit. The totality of the foci involved is for the benefit of the planet and its inhabitants, period. The truth of the messages is to be discerned and used for the benefit of humanity first and then gleaned by the individual to apply personally as part of the wholeness to which it is focused without the necessity of personal names to identify truth. If that is not understood, then the messages need to be read again to transcend this need into commitment to the holographic intention of the information they contain. It is hoped that the succinctness of this message is accepted in the tone of importance in which it is intended. The window of opportunity to accomplish the necessary monumental consciousness transition is small compared to the obstacles within the human belief systems that must be literally dissolved so that the whole may be transformed. It is sincerely hoped that the truth contained will be a sword that cuts through the armor of deception and lays open the hearts and minds of the necessary quotient for success. The question of who is the focusing energy of the messages is a difficult question to answer tactfully and yet completely. Isness is the focus to be sought by each individual awareness. As each expands within the process of self-identification, so does the ability to allow the flow of isness to move through their experience. Each will attract into their awareness knowledge to live into wisdom. The vibratory rate of the planetary environment and of the members of humanity on Earth is low enough that this ability is currently virtually inaccessible. To assist willing members of mankind to access the necessary information to provide a way to transcend this current aberrant state, various volunteer awareness points within higher vibrational frequencies have acted as booster stations to focus this information through those willing to participate on the Earth plane. Knowing the custom of Earth's inhabitants requiring the personify to identify mode, names from the exotic to the ridiculous have been given as sources of this information. The information included exercises in discernment. Most participants failed the discernment tests. Much was filled with profound truth, but much of it was drained of energy by the continual parade of victims wanting their personal problems solved for them. The information became distorted as the foci were withdrawn and the volunteers winged it, faked it, on their own, for their sincerity was lost in the notoriety and greed that resulted. In view of this history, it was the mutual agreement between the parties involved in the dictation, translation, transcription process for these messages that the identities of the foci involved would remain unidentified and there would be no monetary rewards whatsoever involved. Further, there would be no personal information disseminated for any one individual's benefit. The totality of the foci involved is for the benefit of the planet and its inhabitants, period. The truth of the messages is to be discerned and used for the benefit of humanity first and then gleaned by the individual to apply personally as part of the wholeness to which it is focused without the necessity of personal names to identify truth. If that is not understood, then the messages need to be read again to transcend this need into commitment to the holographic intention of the information they contain. It is hoped that the succinctness of this message is accepted in the tone of importance in which it is intended. The window of opportunity to accomplish the necessary monumental consciousness transition is small compared to the obstacles within the human belief systems that must be literally dissolved so that the whole may be transformed. It is sincerely hoped that the truth contained will be a sword that cuts through the armor of deception and lays open the hearts and minds of the necessary quotient for success. Part 2. Chapter 1. There has been a great deal of interest in the independent activities of the people who have received and read the copies of the message and the handbook. As expected, the reactions have been mixed between total acceptance and total rejection. However, the overall impact has been gratifying and effective. There are indeed lights of understanding beginning to be discernible on many parts of the planet. The assimilation and application of the concepts will accelerate the acceptance of the principles involved, and through their application the desire for greater understanding will be increased. Therefore, an opening will be created that will allow for movement toward the goal of a new paradigm, and it will begin to manifest. When the time is ripe for greater expansion of the concept of a new experience for mankind, the information leading to the next step will be ready for distribution. Once the transition is made away from victim consciousness toward the acknowledgement of personal power through alignment with the originating expansive flow of creative energies, the thirst for greater understanding will be aroused. The misunderstanding of looking outward for answers is deeply ingrained and will require deprogramming and education of how to apply this concept to daily living in order to allow it to become a new foundation for manifested reality. Without adequate changes at deep levels of the psyche and application of the previous explained universal laws, the next levels of understanding will be nothing more than another exercise in entertainment. Much of the valuable information disseminated through other receivers has become an addiction for fanaticizing with little or no application in practical living experience. The focus has been toward survival of the physical body so that the same ideals and lifestyle could be maintained until individuals could ascend or rise out of, rather than transcend, go beyond. The focus must be more holistic and include survival for service aimed at lifting the yoke of darkness and descending vibratory experience from humanity and the planet rather than be focused on individual escape from the morass of a destructive situation. In other words, there must be participation in a solution rather than using the information to abandon the ship. Once the goal is identified in a statement, then what comes next? What are the guidelines for participation that will ensure that transcendence through to experience the new paradigm? This will be the focus of the next level of information. Much material has been disseminated indicating that rescue and reform will be provided by extraterrestrial beings, and all humanity has to do is to meditate and wait around for magical processes to change everything for them. It would be wise not to count on it. There is a saying, God helps those that help themselves. That is a truth to put in a dozen places to remind you to let go of the I am a victim that needs to be rescued consciousness. You will be helped, but victims will not be rescued. Victim consciousness vibrates below the necessary levels to enter higher dimensions. Giving up victim consciousness is a personal decision. It is not an easy process. If you rescue, you become a victim of the rescued. Sympathizing with those who are locked into victim consciousness supports their victimhood and ties you to them. Discernment allows you to recognize the situation, and at that point you must acknowledge that this is a situation that is of their own creation through their belief that others control their choices. This does not mean that you must ignore their plight, but does determine that you cannot do for them what they are unwilling to do for themselves. There is not a rule of thumb for how to give wise assistance to them. Their plight is a result of the personal decisions they have made and the attitudes that have influenced those decisions. Remember, they are human beings becoming or not, by their own choice. Teach them the prayer and remind them of it in the midst of their mini-series, and tactfully suggest other viewpoints to them as you become aware of them. With the application of the becoming prayer, opportunities will abound for them. The critical point for the next step in the transcendence process follows the acceptance of the personal ability to move through victim consciousness by accepting responsibility for using the universal laws to take charge of their manifested experience. This does not mean that each must become a millionaire to prove they have accomplished this. In truth, most will find that abundance is measured by the inner feelings of self-approval and confidence that precludes the necessity of impressive material demonstrations for ego aggrandizement. What you do with regard to self and others is more important than what you have. When this is accomplished, all that is necessary is attracted without effort, for each is then encompassed within the expansive flow of creation. To become is the goal of all. How this is to be accomplished is uniquely experienced through free will choice. Help is available. The asking must be for help, not rescue or to piggyback on someone else's accomplishment. Each must know theirs is a unique experience not to be compared to others. Each incarnation is for their own particular sole purpose to be created through their choices and decisions. There are no mistakes other than to remain closed to seemingly new concepts and continue to repeat the current experience for lack of discernment of the connection to that which has focused each into manifestation. That connection vibrates within the awareness of every human and is ignored or responded to with each and every choice and decision. It is our goal to trigger the awareness of this connection in every human possible through direct connection or through changes in the mass conscious awareness on a planetary level, using what you refer to as the 100th monkey theory. First and foremost is transcendence of the victim consciousness into personal responsibility. This process will require that individuals separate themselves from those refusing to change their perceptions and to align themselves with others who are willing to make this change. When lives begin to change as a result of accepting and using personal responsibility through the application of the universal laws, those previously unwilling to change will again choose to follow suit or not. Remember that free will is the loose cannon of the third dimension, and the freedom to choose is made by all whether they admit it or not. Though it may seem that the victim, personal responsibility theme is being nauseatingly repeated, it is the foundation upon which the format for transcendence to the higher dimensions is built. It is the rock from which the foundation is quarried. It is the first step that begins the journey. Lip service is easy. It is in the doing that the proof of the pudding lies. How it is accomplished is between each person and the creative aspect that focused each into manifestation. Through the intuitive understandings that this connection fosters, each will find their purpose and the path of their journey. In the asking for help, the opportunities that genuinely feel right will present themselves. Incorrect choices will be difficult and bring little satisfaction. Asking for discernment brings knowingness and other opportunities to pursue. A house will stand on a rock foundation and allow for layer upon layer of brick to be added. To begin, you must begin at the beginning. Chapter 2. The Bible has a reference to two standing in a field, one is taken and the other is left behind. Does this support the belief that there will be an evacuation of part of humanity by spaceships? In this case, the reference could be applied to a faith in the creative process and to coming into alignment with the expansive self-contemplative flow of energy that births each soul expression into manifested experience. When that alignment reaches a degree of compatibility that allows for a transition to higher dimensional experience, the transfer can be completed during the life experience. It can, but it is a rare happening when the planetary whole is vibrating at the present rate. It has been a long time since that has taken place, contrary to some circulating stories. This is not to say that some blending experiences have not happened. Insofar as massive spaceship removals of humans from this planet, as has been circulated, contemplate 6 billion plus beings and consider how many ships with facilities for them this would take, and the answer is obvious. If humanity, experiencing as they are now, were transferred to another planet, there would be 2 planets in trouble instead of just 1. Each and every being on this planet came with the purpose of bringing the situation here into alignment with the cosmic plan of free will experience leading to balance. That constitutes a lot of intention. That intention is there to be tapped in order to bring this situation to completion. When humanity, or at least a significant portion of it, can go through this situation and heal it themselves, then and only then can they move through their intention to come into balance. In the greater picture of each soul's evolvement, none would choose to be rescued. At the base of the rescue stories lies the victim consciousness. Does this render those messages false? That is for your discernment. Always there is truth to be found, and it is different for each. Ask the knowing part of self for discernment and proceed from that point to consider, and you will know. The presence of an energy cycle called the photon belt is circulating. It has been reported as being seen as a donut-shaped energy field near the Pleiades star system. Does it really exist? Indeed, it does, and calling it a cycle is the key to what it truly is. Regardless of what has been seen, it is a transition of movement between the polar experiences of positive and negative, your terms. This experiencing has been pictured by many as a pendulum-type movement from one extreme to the other. This would be appropriate in linear thought, however, higher dimensions are not experienced in a linear process. Since the great part of experience is in higher dimensional expression, the explanation must be thought of in holographic terms. Religious writings contain some references to wheels within wheels that indicate there are multiple cycles that are in motion and interfacing with each other. This brings to mind the workings of a mechanical watch. However, now you have watches that keep perfect time without those wheels. In this way, cycles can also be in process that are not necessarily circular in motion. Even though circular motion is observed going on around you, such as the motion of the solar system and the zodiac, from the greater holographic perspective, these circular motions are spiral rather than circular, allowing for the expansiveness of the creative energies. If indeed they were circular, then all that is would be static rather than expansive. This would limit evolvement, and as you can easily contemplate, boredom and death would indeed be truth. From this perspective, You can now understand the importance of expansiveness as being at the basis of creation and how evolvement is a natural constituent of experience. With this as a frame of reference, you can begin to grasp that the spiral is accomplished by interlacing the polarities with the circular motion to widen the circle and to either lift or lower the continuity. The shift of energies that are necessary to accomplish the transition between the polarities is something like an electrical charge. It is accomplished by entry and passage through an energy field that causes a change in polarity. These energy fields are also in motion and move through the galaxy in cycles that coordinate with all other cycles with mathematical precision. Planet Earth is now poised at the transition point of several cycles. This is an occurrence that does not happen frequently and is of great interest to this portion of the galaxy. The result of these coinciding cycles is that the transition between polarities will be of greater impact and import, enhanced by the fact that the consciousness of the beings and the planet poised to do this. These are not at the level of evolvement that was intended through the failure to make the transitions that were available in the last approximately 26,000-year cycle. Added to this, is the deliberate plan of the adversarial forces to disrupt the cycle transition into deliberate chaos, intending to continue the negative polarity cycle for their own purposes. This then brings into understanding the necessity for the humans on this planet to make a leap in consciousness in order to survive this transition of energies into the next cycle by coming together in a mass consciousness that has a combined focus of an increased frequency. The upliftment through the release of victim consciousness into personal responsibility is the shift that would accomplish this necessary change. The degree of shift in the mass consciousness will determine the intensity of the planetary experience at a point within the energy field you call the photon belt and the ability of humanity to experience the transition through it. It will also determine the ability of the adversarial plan to accomplish its purposes. Needless to say, their plan will never be allowed to be successful, but the question remains as to what part Earth's inhabitants will play and where the soul awareness will find itself when the scenario plays out. It must be emphasized here that the ground crew is included in this drama. Volunteering to help also carries with it the responsibility of becoming part of the destiny of the planetary consciousness. There will be no rescue. Each will rise or fall within that destiny. This then fuels the necessary commitment and focus of energy in helping humanity to accomplish this last-ditch effort to come into vibratory alignment. End chapter 2.